Well, hello there. I'd like to tell you a story about my grandfather, who I called Pop. He and his cousin Mutt were best friends for their entire lives. They were born just a couple of months apart on neighboring farms in northwest Georgia. They grew up on those farms. They inherited those farms from their parents. They worked those farms till the day they died. They even married sisters, and they saw each other almost every day. But they never ran out of things to talk about. They talk about baseball, which they both loved dearly. They talked about farming, of course. They talked about hunting and fishing. They talked about the preachers that came and went. They talked about their neighbors. They even talked about their neighbors' wives. Never a dull moment when the two of them were together. They would never have used this term back in those days, but I think they loved each other. And one way they showed that love was on every birthday, the other one would give the birthday boy a special gift. Now, these were poor Georgia dirt farmers. They didn't have much money, so those gifts tended to be homemade. It might be a hand-tied fishing fly or a hand-painted duck decoy. It might be a ham from Pop's smokehouse. It might be honey from Mutt's beehives. On a good year, it might be a bottle of homemade wine. But whatever the gift, it was carefully chosen, cheerfully given, and gratefully received. It was an important tradition for both of them. So you can imagine how upset Pop was one year when it was Mutt's birthday, and it was a special birthday. It was one of those with a zero on the end of it. Mutt was turning 50, and Pop had to be out of town. He was in New York City, probably the only time in his life he ever went there. And he couldn't get back in time for Mutt's birthday. He couldn't call him because they didn't have telephones. And so he was really depressed as he walked around the streets of New York City. And down one of those streets, he saw a pet store. And in the window of that pet store was a sign that said, "Come in and meet the world's only baseball bird." Well, that got Pop's attention because, as I said earlier, they both love baseball. So Pop went in, and sitting there right in front of the door on a roost was the ugliest bird he had ever seen. It was shaped kind of like a parrot, but it wasn't pretty like a parrot. What few feathers it had were kind of a dingy brown. And Pop thought, well, that can't be the baseball bird. But right there on this roost it was sitting on was a sign that said, "The world's only baseball bird." Well, Pop went in, get a little closer, get a better look, and the owner of that pet store appeared from out of nowhere, and he said, "Sir, I see you're looking at my bird. Now, I want you to understand that how this bird looks isn't important. It's what this bird can do that will impress you." And with that, he produced a baseball from out of his pocket. And he held that baseball in his right hand, stuck it right in front of that bird. And the bird took one look at it and went, "What?" The outlook wasn't brilliant for the Mudville Nine that day. And that bird then began to recite that famous baseball poem, "Casey at the Bat," from start to finish. Now, Pop wasn't easy to impress, but he was kind of impressed. And the pet store owner said, "But sir," said, "that's not all this bird can do." And he put the ball in his left hand and he stuck it in front of that bird. And the bird took one look at it and started to sing, "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." He sang that song all the way through, from start to finish, in English. And then he sang it in French. And then he sang it in Italian. And then he sang it in Spanish. He sang that song in 7 different languages. Well, now Pop's even more impressed. But the pet store owner said, "Well, sir, that's not all he can do. Let me show you this." And he took the ball and held it right in both hands in front of the bird and said, "Babe Ruth." And the bird went, "What? The Bambino?" And the pet store owner said, Lou Gehrig. What? The Iron Horse? Well, Pop can't believe his ears. But he snatches the ball. He says, let me try it. And so he holds the ball, and like anybody from Georgia would do, he looks that bird in the eye, and he says, Ty Cobb. And the bird goes, what? The Georgia peach. Pop says, I think I got to have that bird. And so they start haggling. That means negotiating a price, which is what folks do down in the South. You don't pay asking price for anything. So they negotiate, and finally they reach a price that both of them are happy with. And Pop hands over his money and gets a receipt, and he's now the owner of the world's only baseball bird. And after the sale's completed, he decides he'll tell the store owner why he wanted that bird so bad. And he said, I just have to do something special. He explained about Mutt and what good friends they were, and how unhappy he was that he wasn't going to be able to get there for his birthday. And his story touched that store owner so much that he said, I'll tell you what I'll do, sir. He said, for no extra money, I will ship this bird to Georgia, and I'll be sure it gets there in time for Mutt's birthday. Well, Pop thought that was a great idea. So he wrote a little note, said happy birthday, and pitched that note and the baseball in the cage, and he left a happy man. But when he finally got home, several days after Mutt's birthday, he could hardly wait to see Mutt. He ran in his own house, dropped his suitcase, gave my grandmother a kiss on the cheek, and ran next door to Mutt's house. Knocked on the door. Mutt, Mutt. Mutt came to the door, and Pop said, Mutt, did you get that bird, that baseball bird I sent to you for your birthday? And Mutt said, oh, yeah, I got it. Said, that was right thoughtful of you. And Pop said, well, what'd you think? What'd you think? Mutt said, well, it was delicious. Pop said, Mutt, you didn't eat that bird. Said, I paid a lot of money for that bird. It could recite Casey at the bat. It could sing, take me out to the ball game in 7 different languages. It could tell you the name of 150, nickname of 150 baseball players. You didn't eat him. Mutt said, well, he didn't say anything to me. And Pop said, well, did you show him the baseball? And Mutt said, no. That ball had been in the bottom of a bird cage for several days. Said, it was so nasty, I wasn't going to touch it. Well, Pop started laughing, and then Mutt started laughing, and they gave each other a big man hug. And Pop told me later that was the last time either one of them ever bought a birthday gift.